welcome back to Open Your Eyes for our first conversation in light of the September celebrations. We have joining us to discuss the concept of the Belize flag. Director of the Institute for Social and Cultural Research, NICH, Mr. Rolando Cocom, and Public History Officer at the Institute for Social and Cultural Research, Mr. Giovanni Pinello, and also my colleagues. Good
Gentlemen,
morning.
good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome back. I
Good
feel like you
morning.
guys were here last week.
They were.
I remember.
But it's all about the story of the Belize flag. You know, in Belize we do have National Flag Day. We have seen several vendors along the street side selling flags. This is the time of the year that we kind of show our patriotism in that kind of way.
Yeah.
But many of us might not necessarily know the history of the flag and how we got it essentially to the standard of the red, white, and blue, and of course the coat of arms. So maybe let's start with you, Mr. Pinello.
Hi, good morning, good morning. Yeah, well, we're back with the topic now.
Yes.
For those of you who follow the academia dealing with flags, we term it as vexillology. The study of banners, it traces, you know, the historical context. What do the symbols mean? What do they bring out? What is the design? What are the proportions? And of course, how these symbols help to unite us as a nation.
Yeah.
And I think Belize's flag, well, a lot of, I think most of the population already knows we're one of the most unique flags in the world, one of the most colorful flags, and I think it does portray.
One of the most details too. Right?
That is true.
Yes.
That is true. And in fact, it is said by those who produce flags that it is one of the most difficult.
Yeah,
to
I would
produce.
imagine all those parts. I want to quickly interject and say I remember there was a show that I really loved watching called The Big Bang Theory.
Oh,
there was an
flags
episode
of the
where,
world.
yeah, fun with flags. And one of the characters highlighted that Belize's flag was the only flag in the world with humans on it. I believe that has since been updated. There's another flag now, I understand, with humans on it. But talk about that, the uniqueness of our flag in that way.
Indeed. And historically, it is actually the coat of arms, which forms a part of the Belizean flag, traces its roots to the early 19th century. So we're talking the early 1800s. And when we look at our Belizean flag, it does combine the historical backdrop from the colonial era
Yes.
into the transition towards the nationalist movement, and thereon with the goal and objective that was set and attained, albeit 31 years later, independence.
Yeah.
And even so, we have found that there are particular elements of the flag that have evolved over time.
Yes.
And so the question often arises, who are those that are representing the Belizean mosaic? A change from two African peoples into now an Afro-Belizean and an Afro-Mestizo. I think one of the things that we all have to understand is that time changes, culture changes, the dynamics of history itself also changes, and so the evolution of the Belizean flag in terms of who are depicted on it, again, is an effort to show that unity, to show that national identity.
Yeah. I'll take it a step further, Mr. Pinello. I think a lot of people, I mean, for sure, the younger generation might not be aware that even before this flag, there was one before that.
Yeah.
Right.
Can we
right.
talk about how we got to this flag?
Okay.
Perhaps we can get Ronaldo in the conversation.
Sure. So good morning to you both again, and to all the audiences listening in. The trajectory of how we got where we are right now with new legislation that is governing licensing for persons who produce the flag and other symbols is a bit lengthy, but to say that the drive for it really with the current Minister of Culture, Honorable Francis Fonseca, is that persistent need that politicians observe, which is that there are different varieties of flag being produced, and this doesn't meet our standard. It doesn't reflect the nation, and especially in formal settings, the flag is supposed to be the most iconic symbol representing the country and its people. And so, because of that need, in February, the Honorable Fonseca presented at the House a bill for national symbols, and that has now come into full effect. And what it does is that it allows the, in this case, what we're primarily regulating, the producers of the Belize flag to apply to the niche to request a license, which will be valid for 5 years, and it allows them to then produce the flag that meets the standard, the official colors, coat of arms, the dimensions of the space between the coat of arms and the borders and all of that, as well as provide further guidelines to institutions and where to place the flag if you're having a ceremony, and so on. But this work as well has several years of labor in the making. From 2019, the government at the time and the National Assembly had supported the standardized version of the flag. But its history, as you indicated, is much longer than that. In fact, it dates to around 1821, some of the earliest records that we have at the Belize Archives and Records Service in Belmopan, of a document that says this is the seal of the settlement, and it very much reflects what is the current coat of arms. As Mr. Pinello indicated, at the time it would have been two African Belizeans surrounded by next to the shield with a tree, which we would have been the mahogany tree, because that was the principal tree that was used for the extraction of timber, that formed part of the main reason why the British and other Europeans were in this part of the world, to extract wealth and to extract logwood at first, and then mahogany. And so it formed part of that history of the country. And then sometime around the 1950s, as Belize is clamoring for independence, and with leaders like George Price, there is a story about, well, what will represent this new movement and this call for self-governance, in this call for independence. And it is rumored, I think, that someone reminded Mr. Price that there was an old flag in the settlement that, that was not being circulated at the time. A sky blue flag with a white circle
Just
in the
blue and
middle.
white,
That was the story that was.
I remember
passed
that
on.
conversation we had. Yes.
Yes, and so they began to use it. They had a seamstress put together a flag, and in fact, Mr. Price also often wore areas the starch with the coat of arms as well. That became very iconic of the movement towards.
Of where we were politically at that time.
For self-governance and then for independence, right? And so it didn't have the red border at that point, as Mr. Pinello indicated. That came closer towards independence as well. But 1821, then by 1900s, it's being used as well in other official documents as a seal, as a representative element of the colonial state. And so that's the origins. It has a very long history, and in fact, one of the things that have come to our attention is that it would have also been based on many other elements within the region. It was very common for colonial governments to establish seals, and so to put sometimes indigenous peoples or what appeared to be indigenous people on their flags or on their seals was very common to place these elements such as trees and shields. They're very common aspects of flag making.
One of the things I really love about our flag is kind of like it really tells our story just by the flag itself, where other flags across the world, you'd only be able to look at colors or maybe lines. We get an entire story. And I love, Rolando, that you were able to document during these periods the evolution of the flag and talk about the political influence and what that contribution could have looked like. My understanding was, based on memory of what we would have discussed, I believe it was in 2023, we spoke about the story of the flag. It was after that that the National Symbols Committee was put together. And then that's where we get to see other parts of our national identity unfold as well. Yes?
Yes. Well, I would just add the caveat there to say that it represents us is also a bit problematic. So the reason why our flag is more unique is actually an accident, right? If it was planned properly, our flag would have been very plain,
Yeah.
you know, and not have all of these
Actually,
details.
that's there even more now.
Yeah, because if it was planned properly, the ideal situation by governments and people there are full institutions in the UK that are dedicated towards flag making, and they generally do want to keep it very simple because it has to be easily identifiable, easy to reproduce as well. And so our one
It's definitely easily identifiable.
Not really.
Probably
People
not easy
still
to
they put
reproduce.
the Laos flag as the Belize flag
the
as
emojis,
on
right?
their
That's-
emojis,
yeah.
and
But
I
that's
still
from a
take
place of
issue
being
with that.
uninformed.
That's
because
why.
there's a stark difference.
There
You
is
can
a
look at
stark
Laos
difference.
and see that there's nothing
Nothing
in the
there.
middle.
Yeah.
So that's
Right.
being
But people still
uninformed.
post it.
You can tell the difference. Can you replicate it quite easily?
No,
That's another
when
story.
people used to ask you to, I don't know if you were when you were in primary school, that would be part of your assignment to draw
Yeah.
the flag, and I could just never. There would be like a stick figure because I can't draw. But I really appreciate the symbolism of the flag in terms of our post-colonial foundations. It doesn't necessarily give the entire history of Belize, but it does give the founding of a nation, the story of the founding of a nation. What I really want to dissect is something that you mentioned earlier, Rolando, when it came to the licensing of the flag. Why was that something that you guys saw as important to do?
Right. I think the most memorable reason why that came about was in around maybe, let's say 2017. It became very common that we were seeing a lot of Belize flags with sometimes two yellow colored men on it.
Yeah.
And that became a public issue, especially sometimes you would enter ceremonies and you would see this flag that was inaccurate. And despite best attempts of telling people, you know, this isn't the flag, it kept circulating. I think since that time, especially in the last 2 years, you're not seeing, you know, a very inaccurate version of the Belize flag. But the new standard has been set, it's been shared, but there are still some details in some flags that are not accurate. You know, they don't meet the standard, and so that is the reason why the legislation exists, and it's there to ensure that people know who are the vendors that have been approved, and then you can, you know, purchase one that has met the standards of the government.
Now, sorry, what is the standard of the flag? And I know it sounds a little bit, you know, of course, the two-man, but what is supposed to be on the coat of arms exactly?
Right, so there's a full description of the coat of arms that has been lodged with there's a full institution, the Admiral in the UK, that was lodged there since independence, and it specifies that there's one Afro-Belizean, one Mestizo Belizean, there's a shield, and it gives, there's a mahogany tree, there's a one with the axe, one with the paddle. So that description as well is available now throughout our municipalities. I don't know if you know where the one is in Belize City, but at each municipality there's a flag monument with a description of the coat of arms. So that is very standard, we know that. But then the question arises, what are the colors? That is the more difficult part that some producers
I know it's supposed to be blue, a particular royal blue and a particular red.
Right. And one of the major difference that you now see with the new standard as well is that there is no border that sometimes would take place where you hoist the flag. So where you see the two holes that are usually placed there to help you
holes?
secure the
Yes.
flag. Okay, at some point they used to either color that full blue and so
Or
cover the section at the border, or sometimes they would place white there,
Yeah,
and
I
that
remember
shouldn't
seeing
be
white,
you know, and so that is one of the aspects that have changed. There's no yellow on either of the two men. it's not yellow and
Yeah.
red. I like the description.
We see a lot of the yellow man flag around the place, especially when you go and buy it,
The little
the
cheap
cheap ones.
ones.
And that brings me to my next question, because along this time of the year, we see a lot of persons trying to look patriotic and wear their flag, make it into clothes, place it all over the place. Sometimes you even see flags on the street fallen from vehicles or just persons dropping it.
Which is illegal, by the way.
What's the etiquette that we should have when it comes to our flag? Are there rules that we should be adhering to? Or maybe not rules, but is there a certain etiquette that we should abide by in terms of respecting our flag?
Right. I mean, the etiquette comes heavily from the military. They have they've codified this over the years, and all militaries have done so. So generally, for instance, you would not allow the flag to touch the ground. You would not as well, just take down a flag and crumble it and walk
Roll
off
it
the
up.
stage. No,
Yeah.
you don't. There's a specific way of folding it
Yeah.
according to military standards. But for the everyday citizens, I think what would apply is our sense of patriotism, right, and civic pride. So basic things like not spilling things over the flag and then still putting it on display. If the flag is ripped and torn, it's best to not use
Replace
the
it,
flag to
yeah.
replace it.
How about wearing it?
So the coat of arms, for instance, and the colors can be used in different ways, as you mentioned. One of the things that the legislation, when it was conceived, is very broad, and so it would allow persons to apply for a license if they would want to put the coat of arms on different types of articles, meaning a coffee mug and so on. What we are saying at NICH at this time, what the minister has advised, is that we're not regulating all of those aspects. We want to encourage people to use the new standard of the coat of arms, which we will have very shortly placed on our NICH Belize website. But there's not going to be at this time any regulation that you need to have a license if you want to put the coat of arms on, for instance, your uniforms or your shirts. We want to encourage people to be patriotic.
I like that you say your uniforms or your shirts. I'm talking swimsuits.
Yeah, because I've seen those. But what I
lot of different
what I
variations.
wanted to ask, and it came from a small business owner that makes these types of clothing, but also I guess put his own little twist on it, and I think he did it for Christmas, where instead of the mahogany leaves, they were like mistletoe leaves on the coat of arms, and then he had like Santa hats, like the two men were wearing Santa hats, and I think his question came along the lines of, are we still allowed to do this in terms of creativity on the flag?
Well, for now, for sure, personally, I encourage creativity. I think Belizeans, as you said, the Belizean ethics and the Belizean civic pride will also determine what items are really acceptable or non-acceptable from our civic pride. But insofar as creativity and innovation, that is readily encouraged. I mean, I remember a time when as well they were like the face mask where everybody was wearing, and then we had some with the coat of arms. To me, that was brilliant.
Yeah.
Use of the coat of arms and our symbols. But in general, the principle is not that the state wants to be ironclad about these details. The state simply is interested to ensure that there is one standard and people know where to go if you want the official standard of the Belize flag.
Yeah.
So you can still purchase whatever flag you can, or you have access to purchasing in Belize today, and we encourage people to purchase a flag or to make their own flags. But if you want the standard that meets all the requirements that the government of Belize has put in place, then you must apply to NICH for that license or purchase a flag from one of the vendors that have been approved by the National Institute of Culture and History and the Minister of Culture, who actually signs these licenses.
Is there a fee for the license?
There's no application fee to apply for a license, no.
Okay. I wanted to ask a question because I remember, I think it was you and Paul that were on the couch. I was watching the show, and I think it was a band or somebody that came on the show with the title Sub Umbra Floreo as part of their band title. And I think I saw you and Paul trying to, figure that out. And I said, but I feel like that's something that is very symbolic on our flag. But I'm not necessarily sure how that ties into us as Belize and Belizeans. Like, I understand what it is. I understand that it's under the shade I flourish. I get all of that. Why is it on our flag?
Yeah. Perhaps we can get you,
Yes,
Mr.
Mr.
Pinelli.
Well, again, from the research we have done, the idea of growth, the idea of prosperity, and under the tree I flourish, brings out this concept that as Belizeans, we have an opportunity and we have a duty to also work towards improvement. The Sub Umbra Florio again goes back to that seal established way back in the early 1800s by 1819 and adopted formally in 1821, as we see in the public meeting records. And that would have been was used right through, even to the point that in 1981, actually 1980, once the announcement was made that the support for Belize's next step into full independence was announced, there also was a call for Belizeans to submit a design for Belize's flag. A committee was established, and what the records reveal is that the flag that we now know as Belizean flag was selected by, and this was a submission done by the late Ines Sanchez and the late Everell Waite, both of them public officers of the time, no?
Yes.
And they carried on this, what had been known as the Bayman flag, the blue and white, and of course adding the red borders as a representation of the opposition party. But they kept the coat of arms with the Sub Umbra Florio as the motto. So that has remained there. And I must also note that there have been other persons who have done works. Manolo Romero, who was once the information officer, he consulted with other persons, including the late Harriet Topsy, the late Mr. Jones. And over the years, successive governments have always sought to ensure that the national flag does represent the entire population. And hence those changes, and now the need to ensure that the proportions, that the color codes, that the representation is what it is. And so Sub Umbra Florio has remained as the motto. And hopefully that will resonate with the general population. We have an opportunity to do our share, to create this nation. And what better in this instance to have the Belizean flag as it is, and as it has been, the guidelines are now in place to ensure that it is a reflection of what Belize truly is. So in a nutshell, that is where we are at this point.
I remember the resounding message from the interview that I did with you in 2023, Mr. Pinello, was that this flag is a part of our identity. And to understand it is to understand what your identity is. And I think for me, that message still resonates now, especially during the September celebrations. You get to pay a bit more attention to it because you see it more.
Right.
And I'm hoping that persons learn a bit more about the history of the flag and get to appreciate it as well.
And another thing is that when you travel outside of Belize and you see that symbol, the flag, no matter what size it may be, or if you see it on a coffee mug, or you know that you are being represented somewhere. Other people are getting to know
Absolutely.
I'm
who
always
and what
proud when
Belize is.
when I see the flag in other official capacities in other countries, because
Right.
then it shows that we are a huge member of the global community, which our flag always stand out. No matter where it is, that's the one. It's the Belize flag.
Yes.
In an array of other flags,
And
that's the one.
indeed, our relatives who live outside of Belize, they always look forward to flying the Belizean flag, and now more so. So indeed, it's an interesting it's an interesting symbol, national symbol,
Yeah.
that really should unite us. And so and it shouldn't only be in September. Very important for all of us, not only in September, and as Rolando mentioned, let's see the type of flags that we have, and where they are now shattered or shriveling, we need to make sure that those are replaced. And of course, the replacement with an accurate one.
Exactly. In terms of access to information from the archives, and I remember the opportunity that I got to visit the museum where you showed me, Rolando, different variations of the flag. Can the general public see this?
Right. I mean, a lot of the information is now accessible online, but at the George Price Center for Peace and Democracy in Belmopan, that is where we have on display the first and official flag of Belize. And so that is the flag as well, the flag of 1981, on which our new standards have been based on. Of course, this flag of 1981 was produced before there was any, Adobe Photoshop or Illustrator that allowed us to get these fine details be reproduced.
Because I think for our flag, and I think even the one that we have on display right now, so for creatives, for persons that would design the flag, we have people like Miss Sandra Mai, that is the iconic flag lady. She designs the flag. Sabrina was, you saw earlier, she was doing a story with her. But you also have graphic designers as well. Do they also need a license for this flag?
Right. So only if you are producing the flag at this stage is what we are regulating. If you're producing it, which
The
could either
tangible
be,
production.
that could also be in country, or you may be importing it. And so in either cases, you would then be required to have a license from
So
us.
one of the sit downs that I had with Miss Sandra was she showed me the different types of flags that we have. I believe this is one of the ceremonial flags. Can you talk about the different types of Belize flags that you would be able to see, and if they are appropriate?
Like, what's the difference between this flag and perhaps the one that we have on the screen
Yes,
right now?
this one has a bow at the top as well.
Right. So when it comes to the ceremonial flag, these have all been usually produced on satin material, which gives you a very a shiny or a glossy-like finish. The production of the flag as well would then have these garments, like you see the headdress that it has at the top, but as well these embellishments on the border that usually are gold, and these are very standard for ceremonial purposes. Like state official events, some states will tell you bring your ceremonial flag, and then this is what they expect, right? And so we're not very specific to the detail to tell you what these are. Again, when you are being asked, for instance, to produce a flag, for instance, if you are going to a United Nations event, there are certain standards. They will tell you if it's a standard flag. If it's a standard flag, then you don't print on satin material and you don't provide these other embellishments.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, of course, they are essentially what it comes back to when in terms of the dimensions of the flag would be the dimensions of your flag pole. So you don't want to have a huge flag on a small flag pole, and this is what the guidelines that we will provide to persons who are approved a license will help them to know if this is the dimension of your pole. If it's going to be outdoor, this would then be the dimension of the flag. So it's just some general criteria that helps producers to ensure that there's some standards across the board. But what is important for producers to know is that in producing the flags, the colors will change depending on the materials that you are going to print on. And so that is also another variation that, again, it's a responsibility that we then place on the printers to ensure that they reproduce it
orange
in accordance to the
and
standard.
sky blue
All
flag.
right. Well,
But
gentlemen-
all of this information is available online.
Yes, and if anybody who has additional questions, they can reach out to us. Our number is 822-3307. That's the number for the Institute for Social and Cultural Research. As well, they could reach us on email. All of that is listed on the website. It's easier if they go to nichebelize.org, find our contact information, and write to us or give us a call, and we'd be happy to provide more details.
All right.
Wonderful.
Well, thank
Gentlemen,
you so
Thank you
much.
so much. And of course, before we head to break, we want to leave you with the motivational moment of the morning. And the motivational moment comes from Saint Mother Teresa of Calcutta, and she quoted, "We cannot all do great things, but we can do small things with great love." And that is by Saint Mother Teresa of Calcutta. Wonderful,
Beautiful.
beautiful quote.
Alrighty, we take a quick break now, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll be joined by the Belize City Council, and they will be talking to us about preparations for storm safety. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.